Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and this is an awesome strength INT build. I've always been wanting to do one of these, and later on I'm going to do a Star Scourge Greatsword build as well. But for this, we're going to be using the Fallingstar Beastjaw and the Ruins Greatsword. Two builds in one video, two awesome weapons that we can come up with very unique builds for, and they're very, very situational, both of them. And honestly, I like them both. Now, the Fallingstar Beastjaw does a lot of posture damage. It's like Flame of the Redmanes, except at an even longer range. In just 4 or 5 casts mostly, it usually will break their posture. And the Ruins Greatsword is better for crowd control and some of the earlier game bosses. Both these weapons are awesome. We're going to go over build, stats at 150, everything you need to know. Now, you get the Fallingstar Beastjaw from defeating the Fallingstar Beast, the larger one, in Mount Gelmir. The Ruins Greatsword you obtain from either before the Radon Festival or after. There's a boss there that you have to fight. It's a dual boss fight. It's kind of rough to do in the early game, although possible. I've done it around 40 or 50, and you'll get the legendary Ruins Greatsword. And unlike the other legendary weapons, the Ruins Greatsword is actually a really good weapon. Out of the two, though, you're going to hear me say this rather frequently, I do prefer the Fallingstar Beastjaw, though, because of the fact that it does immense posture damage, and then we can come up and get a critical hit in. It's absolutely awesome. It's entirely damaging, and it's an incredible weapon that is very, very good for most boss situations. If you're going to use summons or co-op, this thing's fantastic as well. And if you're soloing, you can handle it with this also, because as long as you step back and spam it, you're always going to be doing, I think, roughly 33 posture damage per Ash of War. And it's incredibly cheap to use too. It's not even an expensive Ash of War to use. So it's kind of like Thunderbolt in the sense of how often you can spam it, or at least close to that, while also doing posture damage. And we have two different builds for these, and the two different builds we have are only slightly different. These weapons scale very, very much the same, and they both do primarily physical damage with the Ash of War. It's mostly boosted by weapon level, so Somber Smithing Stones, and then it's boosted a little bit by strength, and a very, very, very tiny amount of the Ash of War's damage comes from the INT stat. So you really only need the base intelligence. You're not going to get that much more out of it because its damage comes primarily from the weapon level and a little bit of the strength stat. Like I said before, the INT stat is almost negligible if we're mainly using the Ash of War. As far as the damage on the actual weapon, doesn't scale great there either. It is a D, and honestly it feels like a D scaling. So the INT stat is definitely third on that list. Get it upgraded first. Make sure you have good strength, because strength is going to be your second. And as far as the INT stat, it's definitely negligible. It's not a huge deal. You don't need high INT to use these weapons. It's not something that you need. You don't need to be a mage to rock either one of these weapons. You just need the minimum intelligence stat. Now, to get past that, that was just to make it understood that as far as the weapon goes, it's definitely weapon level and strength, and then intelligence at the very bottom. Now, Elden Beast, I managed to break his posture 3 or 4 times, which had to be one of the most posture-breaking fights I've had with him. This is on Journey 4, by the way, so he's got a lot of HP at this point. And yeah, broke his posture a whole bunch. This thing does fantastic posture damage, can constantly be spammed, and it's a very, very, very good tool. And it really does feel like a longer range Flame of the Redmanes that's highly spammable. The Fallingstar Beastjaw is in its own way, especially with the posture damage. Definitely, it's in the realm of overpowered, especially if you like to spam it. It's very easy to spam too, and you can also dodge very easily out of the animation because it's not a long animation. So you're doing posture damage, you're able to dodge. This thing is quite powerful even in the late game. That's why I wanted to show a couple of the late game bosses here. As far as the Ruins Greatsword, we're going to go over that. It's a little bit different for that sword. And the damage on either, again, isn't incredibly high, and the damage is difficult to buff because it is purely physical damage. So talisman-wise, you don't have a ton of variety there. The Ritual Swords Talisman and the Shard of Alexander will be two unique talismans you can use for these, including the Star Scourge Greatsword, which also does a lot of physical damage. Anything that does, those two are kind of universal in that sense, but a lot of other talismans aren't really going to boost the damage here. But it doesn't matter. The Fallingstar Beastjaw, as you can tell what it did to Elden Beast, the posture damage is insane. So for equipment, we have Fallingstar Beastjaw plus 10, any seal will do. We have the Shard of Alexander. We have the Dagger Talisman for critical hits that we seem to be getting a lot. Ritual Sword Talisman, Dragoncrest, and then we have the Magic for a little boost and the Defense Tear. These are universal 150 stats that I like for both these weapons. This is something that you can use for both of these. A good amount of strength, a fair bit of strength, minimum intelligence, faith so we can boost it with things like Golden Val and Howl Shabribri so we can get some damage out of that because they're generic damage, which is really good when it comes to this. These stats are well rounded. I like where I'm at. Could use a little more vigor, but that's up to the player. I prefer glass cannon builds. That's just kind of how I play Elden Ring. It's up to you if you want to move stuff around just to get more vigor. On to the Ruins Greatsword, we have the Ash of War, which is much like the Blasphemous Blade, and then we have the Charged R2, which does a unique slam on the ground, and then it has that extra explosion that doesn't cost FP, but do be aware, it is a little stamina costly. Now for equipment here, we have the Ruins Greatsword plus 10, any seal will do. Shard of Alexander, we're using the Axe Talisman here, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragoncrest Talisman, any of them will do, preferably the Great Shield on both. And then we have the Magic Tear along with the Charge Tear or Defense Tear. If you're going to be doing charged attacks though, you can throw the Charge Tear in there as well. Now for the Ruins Greatsword, it does a lot of damage, and it's not incredibly damaging in the sense of it can't really meet with the Blasphemous Blade in terms of damage and how buffable it is. It's not going to do that amount of damage, but it does enough damage. It has a really good amount of range, and then that charged R2 is really awesome, and I'm on Xbox, so that's R2, and it does a lot of stagger with that as well. You can also add the Jump Attack Talisman for this one as well and get in posture damage with that. But for me, I like using the Ash of War along with that Charged R2 combination to kind of make the best out of a special weapon that is quite good when utilized in certain circumstances. It really is a very good, well-rounded weapon, especially since you can get it relatively early in the game if you're able to defeat those two very tough bosses at an early level. Actually, if your game, although it's got the hefty 50 strength requirement, although you would need less than that to two-hand it, you can definitely go and grab that early on if you're really up for a tough fight. But do be aware that the Crucible Knight especially is a little difficult at a lower level. Now, for mob control, I always go with the Ruins Greatsword. I like it better. It absolutely smacks. It has that long trail that can completely obliterate mobs. Over the Fallingstar Beastjaw, this is where it's definitely situational. Out of the two, I prefer that for mob control. Now I'm just going to show a couple of different clips here while we talk about both these weapons one more time in terms of damage. Now, as far as buffs go, I like Golden Val and Howl Shabribri. They're not completely necessary, but they do add 40% generic damage. However, you can also use Flame Grant Me Strength and get around 35% because it gives you 20% physical damage without having to worry about being a total glass cannon. So Flame Grant Me Strength works as well too, and then you could lower your Faith because you don't need that 33 for Hell. That's really up to you. There's a 5% difference there, but don't forget, with Howl Shabribri, you also take more damage as well. For Commander Niall, by the way, I know a lot of people have a hard time with him. Both the Blasphemous Blade and the Ruins Greatsword can get rid of the knights before they even get to you. This is again on Journey 4, and so everything has a little bit more HP, not a ton, but definitely more. And as you can tell, as far as this goes, in the Blasphemous Blade, there's certain weapons where you can just obliterate those knights before they even get to you, and then you can kind of trap Niall into doing the same attack animation over and over again. And he'll end up doing the same thing repeatedly over and over again as far as the jump if you keep backing up. And that's really useful. If you're having a hard time with him, it's one of the easiest attacks that he does have that you can avoid. And if you have something that's medium range, not too long, not too close, he gets stuck in that animation. It makes him very beatable. If you guys hung with me all the way here, then definitely hit that subscribe button. There's a ton of awesome PvE builds on my channel, and I'm trying to build an awesome Elden Ring community. It's been growing, it's been fantastic, and I appreciate everybody. Also, remember and keep in mind that when you're posing for a thumbnail, yeah, definitely don't get too close to the cliff because, yeah, you don't really want to do that. That actually happened. Anyway, great thumbnail we got out of that. Definitely be sure to sub. Thanks for watching, everybody.